Look at her face. Those eyes staring back at you from 1843. That's Hannah. Behind her, the bayou waits like a living thing. Cypress trees dripping with moss, water black as oil. She's standing at the edge of two worlds. The plantation that owns her body, and the swamp that's about to claim her soul. In 3 days, she'll walk into that bathhouse and vanish. No body, no tracks, no explanation. Just silence so heavy it'll haunt this place for the next 200 years. This is the last anyone ever saw of Hannah. What happened next breaks every rule of reality. Stay with me, because this story gets darker with every single detail. In the summer of 1843, a slave woman named Hannah vanished from a Louisiana plantation, leaving behind nothing but a silent bathhouse and questions that would never be answered. The night was thick with heat, the kind that makes the air feel like wet wool against your skin. The bayou pressed close to the Beaumont plantation, its presence a constant reminder that civilization here was just a thin layer over something wild and ancient. Hannah was known by everyone on the plantation. She was quiet, efficient, and careful. She worked in the main house and the bathhouse, a small wooden structure built near the edge of the property where the manicured grounds gave way to wild swamp. The bathhouse was where the owners came to wash away the day, a place of brief comfort in the oppressive Louisiana heat. For Hannah, it was just another place of endless work. The bathhouse sat on wooden stilts, raised above the damp ground. Cypress trees loomed around it, their branches draped with Spanish moss that swayed even when there was no breeze. The water for the baths came from a well, hand-pumped and heated over a fire. Hannah tended to everything. She kept the place clean, the water ready, the towels folded. She was always there when needed, invisible when not. On the night of August 12th, something changed. The owner's wife went to the bathhouse for her evening wash. She expected to find Hannah waiting, as always. Instead, she found silence, the kind of silence that makes you hold your breath. The door was closed but not locked. Inside, the bathhouse was untouched. The water in the large wooden tub was cold, the fire long dead. A stack of clean towels sat folded on the bench. Hannah's work dress was neatly laid out on a hook, as if she had simply stepped out for a moment. But Hannah was gone. The owner's wife called out. No answer. She walked the short path back to the main house, her steps quick, her mind racing. She told her husband, and his face went from confusion to anger in seconds. Not concern, not worry, anger. Hannah was property, and property did not simply disappear. Men were sent to search. They carried lanterns and called her name into the darkness. They checked the slave quarters first. The other enslaved people shook their heads. No one had seen her since late afternoon. They searched the grounds, the barn, the smokehouse, every building on the plantation. Nothing. By midnight, the search moved to the perimeter, to the place where the plantation ended and the bayou began. That's when the first strange detail emerged. There were no tracks. Hannah had left no footprints in the soft earth around the bathhouse. No bent grass, no broken branches, no sign of someone running or even walking away. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist the moment she stepped out of that building. Or perhaps she never stepped out at all. Perhaps something else had happened, something that left the bathhouse silent and Hannah gone without a trace. The men stood at the edge of the bayou, their lanterns casting weak light into the endless darkness of cypress and water. Somewhere in that darkness, alligators moved through the black water. somewhere in there, the swamp went on for miles, a maze of channels and islands and places where the ground itself could swallow you whole. And somewhere in there maybe was Hannah, or what was left of her, or maybe nothing at all. Morning came, and with it the decision. Hannah had run. That was the only explanation that made sense to the owner. Enslaved people ran. It happened. Usually they were caught within a day or two, brought back broken, and used as examples. The owner sent word to the slave catchers. These were men who made their living hunting human beings, men with dogs trained to follow a scent for miles. They arrived before noon, confident and ready. The dogs were turned loose at the bathhouse. They circled the structure, noses to the ground, tails stiff. They picked up Hannah's scent immediately. She had been there, worked there, lived in that space for hours every day. The dogs pulled at their leads, eager. Then something happened that the catchers had never seen before. The dogs tracked to the edge of the bathhouse platform, and then they stopped. Just stopped. They circled, whined, and refused to go further. One of the dogs, a big red-bone hound with a reputation for never losing a trail, sat down and howled. A long, mournful sound that made the hair stand up on the back of every man's neck. The catchers forced the dogs forward. They dragged them toward the bayou, toward the wall of green that started just yards from the bathhouse. The dogs fought them. When they were finally pushed into the edge of the swamp, they scattered in different directions, baying in confusion. There was no trail, no scent to follow. It was as if Hannah had simply vanished into air. The owner refused to accept this. He organized more men, enslaved and free, and sent them into the bayou. They walked the obvious paths, checked the small islands, looked for any sign of passage. The bayou was not a place you could move through quietly. The water was loud. The mud sucked at your feet. Branches broke. But they found nothing broken, nothing disturbed, no trace of a woman fleeing in panic or desperation. The search went on for 3 days. Each day, the men came back exhausted, covered in mud and mosquito bites, with nothing to show. The bayou was vast, yes, but it was also brutal. Without preparation, without supplies, without knowledge of the safe paths, a person would die quickly out there. The heat alone could kill. The water was unsafe to drink. And then there were the alligators, the snakes, the insects that could drive you mad with their constant attack. By the 3rd day, a new theory emerged among the searchers. Hannah had gone into the bayou and died. Quickly, probably. Drowned in a deep channel or taken by an alligator. Her body would never be found. The swamp did not give up its dead easily. This explanation satisfied the owner enough to call off the search. Property lost, lesson learned, move on. But it did not satisfy everyone. The other enslaved people on the plantation, the ones who had known Hannah, who had worked beside her and whispered with her in the brief moments of rest, they knew something else was happening. They remembered things, small things that now seemed important, and they were afraid. Not afraid she would be caught and punished. Afraid of something much worse. Afraid that the silence in the bathhouse meant something terrible and old had woken up. The enslaved people of Beaumont Plantation lived in a world of whispers. Open talk was dangerous, but whispers in the dark, words shared while working in the fields or preparing food. These were the threads that held their community together. And after Hannah vanished, the whispers changed. They became urgent, frightened. An older woman named Ruth spoke first. She had known Hannah better than most. They had worked together in the main house, their hands moving in rhythm as they cleaned and cooked and served. Ruth told the others that Hannah had been different in the days before she disappeared. Quieter than usual, which was saying something because Hannah was already the quietest woman on the plantation. She had been distracted, looking off toward the bayou when she thought no one was watching. Then there was James, a man who worked the fields. He came forward with his own story. 3 nights before Hannah vanished, he had been walking back from the barn late at night. He passed near the bathhouse and saw a light. Not lamplight, something else. A soft, blue glow that seemed to come from the direction of the water. He thought maybe Hannah had left a lamp burning, but when he got closer, the light disappeared. He never told anyone because there was nothing to tell. Just a light, just a moment, but now it felt important. Another woman, young and terrified, admitted she had seen Hannah at the edge of the bayou 2 weeks before the vanishing. Hannah had been kneeling by the water, her hands pressed together, praying maybe, or something else. The young woman had not wanted to interrupt, had not wanted to be seen watching, so she had slipped away. But she remembered that Hannah's lips had been moving, forming words that made no sound, and the water in front of her had been completely still, like glass, even though there was a breeze that day. These stories spread through the quarters. They mixed with older stories, legends that had been passed down from parents to children, tales brought from Africa, and transformed in this new, terrible world. The bayou was more than just a swamp. It was a place of spirits. The enslaved people knew this in their bones. They knew about the hates, the ghosts of those who died in chains, unable to rest. They knew about the old gods who lived in the water, gods who remembered Africa, and sometimes answered prayers in ways that the living could not understand. There was a specific legend about the area near the bathhouse. An old man, now dead, had once told a story about a pool deep in the bayou, a place where the water was so dark it looked like a hole in the world. He said it was a doorway, a place where the spirits could cross over, a place where someone desperate enough, someone with the right knowledge, could step through and leave this world entirely. Not death, not escape in the usual sense, something else, a vanishing so complete that not even the dogs could follow. The whispers grew, and with them the fear. Because if Hannah had found that doorway, if she had stepped through it, then what did that mean for the rest of them? Hope, or something more dangerous, the kind of knowledge that, once spoken aloud, could not be taken back? The overseer's name was Garrett. He was a hard man, made harder by years of enforcing the plantation's brutal order. He took pride in his work, in his ability to keep the enslaved people in line, to prevent runaways, to maintain absolute control. Hannah's vanishing was a personal failure. It ate at him. While the owner had moved on, satisfied with the explanation that Hannah had died in the swamp, Garrett could not let it go. He returned to the bathhouse again and again, walking its perimeter, examining every board, every nail. He went at night when the plantation was quiet, carrying a lantern and muttering to himself. The other workers watched him from their quarters and said nothing. They knew obsession when they saw it. Garrett began interviewing the enslaved people again, not gently. He demanded answers, threatened punishment, promised rewards for information. But they had nothing to give him, or nothing they were willing to give. Their answers were the same. No, they had not seen Hannah. No, they did not know where she went. No, they had not helped her escape. The word escape stuck in Garrett's mind. He did not believe it, could not believe it. Escape required planning, help, resources. Hannah had none of those things. He studied the bathhouse more carefully. The structure was simple. 4 walls, a roof, a raised floor to keep it above the damp ground. The tub was built into the floor, fed by pipes from the well outside. Garrett examined every inch of that floor, looking for loose boards, hidden spaces, anything that might explain how Hannah had disappeared so completely. He found nothing. The floor was solid. There were no hidden compartments, no trap doors, no secret ways out. But then, on his 5th night of searching, he found something. It was small, easy to miss. Caught between 2 floorboards near the tub was a single braid of hair. Not loose hair, a deliberately braided strand, tied at both ends with thin strips of cloth. The braid was made from Hannah's hair, he was certain of that. But it had been left there intentionally, placed there with purpose. Next to it, wedged into a crack in the wood, was a feather, white and gray from some water bird. The feather was clean, fresh, as if it had been placed recently. Garrett took these items and stared at them in the lamplight. They meant something. He was sure of that. But what? He showed them to no one. Instead, he took them home and locked them in a box. That night, he could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the bathhouse, the silent, empty bathhouse with its cold water and folded towels. He saw Hannah's face, calm and expressionless as always. And behind her, he saw something else. The bayou, dark and waiting. The next day, Garrett did something he had never done before. He went to Ruth, the older woman who had known Hannah, and he asked her a question without threats or anger. He asked her if Hannah had believed in the old ways, the spirits, the magic. Ruth looked at him for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she said yes, Hannah had believed. And more than that, Hannah had known things, old things, things passed down from her grandmother, who had been born in Africa, and remembered. Garrett's discovery of the braided hair and the feathers should have been the end of it. But obsession has a way of digging deeper, of turning over stones best left alone. He became convinced that there was more to Hannah's story, something hidden in the plantation's history. He began to search the main house, looking through old papers, ledgers, anything that might give him a clue. The Beaumont plantation had been in the family for 3 generations. The current owner's grandfather had built the place in 1791, carving it out of the bayou through sheer will and the labor of enslaved people brought from other states and directly from Africa. The family kept meticulous records. Every purchase, every birth, every death, all of it written down in careful handwriting in leather-bound books stored in the study. Garrett found what he was looking for in a ledger from 1809. The entry was brief, just a few lines in faded ink. It recorded the disappearance of an enslaved woman named Abigail. The circumstances were noted with cold precision. Abigail had been working in the bathhouse. This was the same bathhouse, rebuilt once after a fire, but in the same location, over the same ground. She had been there one evening, and by morning she was gone. A search had been conducted. No body was found. The entry concluded with a single line that made Garrett's blood run cold. No trace discovered. Structure found silent. Silent. The same word that had been used to describe the bathhouse after Hannah vanished. Not empty. Silent. As if the silence itself was significant. There was more. Garrett kept searching and found another entry. This one from 1825. Another woman. Another disappearance from the same location. The details were almost identical. She had been working in the bathhouse, had vanished overnight, had left no trail. The search had been abandoned after 3 days. The entry noted that the enslaved community had become difficult to manage after the incident, whispering about spirits and curses. The overseer at the time had recommended selling several of the more vocal workers to break up the unrest. 3 women, 3 vanishings, all from the same place, all leaving the same eerie silence behind. Garrett sat in the study, the old ledgers spread out before him, and felt something he had not felt in years. Fear. Not fear of punishment or failure. Fear of something beyond his understanding. Fear of the possibility that the world was stranger and darker than he had ever imagined. He thought about the location of the bathhouse. It sat at the edge of the property where the land met the bayou. That specific spot had been chosen by the grandfather, according to family stories, because there was a natural spring there. The water was clean and cold, rising up from deep underground. The spring fed into the bayou through a small channel. Garrett had seen it, had walked past it 100 times without thinking. But now he wondered, what was below that spring? What was in the deep places under the bathhouse, in the dark water that came up from the earth? He went back to the bathhouse one final time. It was late afternoon, the light golden and thick. He stood on the platform and looked down through the gaps in the floorboards. He could see the ground below, the dark earth, and the glint of water from the spring. And as he stood there, he felt it. A presence, not hostile, not welcoming, just there, old and patient and completely indifferent to him. Garrett left the bathhouse and never returned. He told the owner that he believed Hannah had drowned, her body lost in the deep channels of the bayou. The owner accepted this. The matter was closed. But Garrett knew the truth. Hannah had not drowned. She had not run. She had found a doorway, a way out that was older than the plantation, older than slavery itself. And she had walked through it, leaving nothing behind but silence. The bathhouse stood empty after that summer of 1843. No one wanted to use it. The owner's wife refused to go near it, claiming it gave her an uneasy feeling. The owner himself admitted that the place felt wrong somehow, though he would not elaborate. For a few months, there was talk of tearing it down and building a new bathhouse elsewhere on the property. But the talk never became action. The structure remained, slowly beginning its decline. The enslaved people avoided it as well, but for different reasons. They saw it as sacred ground now, a place where Hannah had achieved what none of them could. Complete escape, not just from the plantation, but from the world that had enslaved her. The whispers about her grew into something like legend. Some said she had become a spirit of the bayou, joining the Haints and old gods in the water. Others said she had found her way back to Africa, traveling through the spirit world to return to the land of her ancestors. A few believed she had simply found peace, a quiet place beyond suffering where the chains could not reach. Whatever the truth, her story became a source of hope. Quiet, hidden hope that was never spoken aloud to the overseers or the owner, but that lived in the hearts of those who remained in chains. If Hannah could escape so completely that even the dogs could not follow, then perhaps there were other ways out. Perhaps the world was not as closed and final as it seemed. The bathhouse deteriorated quickly. The Louisiana climate was merciless to abandoned structures. Within a year, the roof began to leak. Within 2 years, the floorboards were rotting. The bayou patient and relentless, began to reclaim the land. Vines grew up the stilts. The cypress trees pressed closer. The Spanish moss hung thicker, until the structure was barely visible from the main plantation buildings. The Beaumont plantation itself lasted another 30 years. The family's fortunes declined after the war that ended slavery. Without enslaved labor, the land could not be maintained. The main house fell into disrepair. The fields grew wild. By 1880, the plantation was abandoned entirely. The buildings collapsed slowly, returning to the earth. But the bathhouse, or what remained of it, stood longest. Its stilts sank into the soft ground, but the basic structure endured, a skeleton of wood wrapped in vines and moss. Local people, both black and white, began to tell stories about the place. They said it was haunted. They said that on certain nights, you could see a blue light near the ruins, moving through the trees. They said that if you stood very quiet at the edge of the bayou near where the bathhouse had been, you could hear singing. A woman's voice, low and steady, singing songs that no one recognized, but everyone somehow understood. Songs about freedom and spirits and doorways between worlds. Hannah's story became part of the folklore of Louisiana. Over the decades, the details changed, were added to and embellished, but the core remained the same. A woman had vanished from a silent bathhouse, leaving no trace, and the mystery had never been solved. Was it escape? Magic? Tragedy? The answer depended on who you asked. But perhaps the truest answer is simply this. The silence that was found in that bathhouse was not the silence of emptiness or death. It was the silence of a profound mystery. The silence of questions that cannot be answered by searching or logic. It was the silence of the bayou itself, which keeps its secrets and claims its own. Hannah walked into that silence, and it closed around her like water. And whether she found freedom or something else, she left behind a story that refuses to die. A reminder that even in the darkest times, there are forces in the world older and stranger than the cruelty of human beings. The bayou remembers, the water remembers, and somewhere in the deep places where the springs rise from the earth, Hannah's spirit may still linger, finally and completely free.